welcome everybody to the Public Service Committee hearing. I'm going to pass it over to my co-chair, Ken Gordon, to introduce any of the representatives that are on the line.
Thank you very much, Chair Brady, and welcome everybody. I welcome everybody especially, but a little special welcome to Chief Bongiorno from Bedford, the town where I live. Nice to see you on the call. And welcome to our House Vice Chair, Natalie Higgins. And I see Representative David DeCoste, who is on the committee here. Thank you very much for being here. As I see other committee members, I'll point that out.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. And we're going to start, and we usually take legislators out of order because there is other meetings going on in the essence of time. So first we have up is Senator Cindy Friedman on. I don't see her on, so I'm going to get back to her next. What about Senator Lesser? And I don't see him on. We're going next to Representative Tricia Farley Bouvier.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
While I don't see them, I do see some of our committee members who have just come in.
Okay, go ahead.
We may be still letting in some folks. So our ranking member, Representative Whalen, is here, and Representative Kushmerek is here. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we still letting in folks, Cody? Oh, and Representative Eiderhoven is here. I think people are still coming in.
Folks have been coming in. I did just hear from Senator Friedman. She's on her way in as well.
Thank you, Cody. Well,
Jason King also here, Representative Senator Fatman.
Thank you, Representative. Well, as we're letting people in the essence of time, I do see that Representative Tom Walsh is on the line. If you want to go ahead, Representative Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to see you, Chairman Gordon. Very quickly, House Bill 2794 is a bill I filed. It's fairly straightforward. It would provide for a flag of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the United States flag for any firefighter, police officer who was killed in the line of duty or their death was caused from their job. I don't see a significant cost to this bill. The committee reported this out favorably last term. Unfortunately, with the situation with the pandemic, a lot of bills I think got slowed down, and I think this was one of them. So we're hopeful that this year that this bill will move forward, and I'd appreciate your consideration for this. And that's all the time I'll take. Thanks to you and the members of the committee.
Thank you, Representative, for your testimony. My co-chair, do you have any questions or anything?
No, I am surprised that doesn't already exist. So that doesn't already happen. So thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Anybody from the committee have any testimony or questions? Seeing none, thank you, Representative, for your testimony. Next, we're going to
Chair Brady, if I might just may, that has come up a number of times in our district in Hanover. So it'd be good. I would say as well, please, let's expedite that legislation and move it out, because we share constituents where that has been an issue. And I know either your office has bought the flag or my office has bought the flag, but it is certainly something. It's surprising it hasn't been addressed and it's been neglected this long. So thank you, Rep. Walsh, for.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Anyone else? Thank you again, Representative Walsh, for filing this. Next, we're going to go to the top of the list, Senator Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to you and Chair Gordon. I am here to testify on two bills that I've refiled this session. First one being S-1720, an act relative to line of duty death benefits. This bill would mandate that certain public safety officials who die by suicide as a direct result of a traumatic event or set of events experienced during the course of the employee's active duty service be eligible for killed in line of duty benefits. Under this bill, a licensed mental health professional would have to establish the suicide was a direct result of the traumatic event or events experienced during the performance of the employee's active duty service. We must acknowledge that physical injuries are not the only type of threats public safety officials face during active duty service. It is clear from data and research that deeply tragic and traumatic events can take both a physical and mental toll on our public safety officials. Look at 9/11 or the attack on our Capitol, and we must treat them equally, especially when they result in death. In the tragic event that threats to a public safety official's mental health causes them to die by suicide, we have to ensure that these employees are eligible for the same benefits as others killed in the line of duty, and their family members are supported in their time of grief. Second bill I'd like to testify in support of is S-722, an act relative to disability pension for violent crimes. So the issue is that under current law, public safety officials or officers that retire due to accidental disability are eligible to receive 75% of their regular compensation at the time of their injury. This bill would allow a small subset of severely injured public safety officers that retired due to accidental disability because they were the victims of a violent act injury to be eligible to receive 100% of their regular compensation, including applicable benefits and stipends, until they reach the age of mandatory retirement. At that time, they would be eligible for 80% of the pension, including cost of living increases. The bill is very clear. It defines violent act injury as, quote, a serious permanent personal bodily injury sustained as a direct and proximate result of a violent attack upon a person by means of a dangerous weapon, including but not limited to a firearm, knife, automobile, explosive device, or other dangerous weapon. The expenses accompanying violent crime injuries place a very heavy burden on disabled public safety officers and their families. And we acknowledge this burden often and the sacrifice made when municipalities file home rule petitions on a case-by-case basis to provide accidental disability compensation at 100% of the officer's regular salary. And that's the rub. The municipality has to file a home rule petition, and it's on a case-by-case basis. This creates a problem of consistency and fairness, whereby municipalities across the Commonwealth could and do provide inconsistent benefits to injured officers. This bill would appropriately and consistently compensate public safety officers throughout the Commonwealth who were injured while protecting our communities. It creates a standard, and it ensures that everybody, no matter where they live and what municipality they work in, are treated the same and are treated fairly. I strongly believe that this is the least we can do for officers who find themselves in this situation. As such, I respectfully request that the committee report these bills favorably. Thank you in advance for your consideration, and please do not hesitate to contact me or ask me any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, for your compelling testimony. I don't have any questions. Do you, my co-chair Gordon?
Actually, I had some, but you answered them in your presentation, so I really appreciate the completeness of what you just said. And these are important bills, so thank you very much for carrying them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Co-chair. Anyone else on the committee? Seeing none, I know you got a busy day, Senator, with the Ways and Means hearing coming up. So if I have any questions, I'll get back to you later, but thank you for your compelling testimony.
Okay, thank you. And I see who's on this Zoom, so I know you're going to hear a lot more about this, and it's going to be even more compelling than what I've talked about. So thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll be taking other legislators as they come on board. I don't see any more on there right now that had been asked to testify. So we're going to go to Chief Brian Keyes, Chelsea Police Department.
Good morning, Chairman Brady. Appreciate it. Chairman Gordon and honorable committee members. My name is Brian Keyes. I'm the police chief in Chelsea. Been the police chief in Chelsea for the past 14 years. I'm here this morning to testify briefly on behalf of the Mass Chiefs of Police Association as the legislative committee chair, as well as the Mass Major City Police Chiefs as the president of that association for the past 7 years, in full support of Senate Bill 1722, filed by Senator Friedman, as she just outlined, titled An Act Relative to Disability Pensions and Violent Crimes. I am honored to be here this morning testifying with my good friends, Chief Bob Bongiorno of the Bedford PD and retired Detective Mario Oliveira, previously of the Somerville PD. It was back in the fall of 2016 when Chief Bongiorno, Mario Oliveira, and retired Officer Bob DiNapoli of the Woburn PD, and we'll talk about their stories, or Mario will when he testifies, first met with then at that time Chief of Staff Cindy Friedman in the late Senator Ken Donnelly's office to begin the process of drafting language for this important bill. Senator Freeman definitely took the lead and did a phenomenal job drafting the language. The bill was first filed in 2017. It was refiled in 2019 and filed again once again this session. Essentially, the language of the bill, as was outlined by Senator Freeman, looks to modify Chapter 32 in Section 1 by creating a definition of a violent act injury and also adding additional language in Sections 2 and 3, essentially to create a baseline as what the Senate had indicated is what we believe to be a fair and reasonable set of benefits for those police officers, and albeit thankfully it's relatively rare, that become permanently disabled as a result of becoming a victim of a violent attack with a weapon, such as being shot, as was the case with Detective Oliveira, or being stabbed or intentionally run down by a motor vehicle. The hope is that this language, if passed into law, will create a level of consistency among all 351 municipalities and prevent individual police officers from having to petition their state elected leaders to file, as the Senator indicated, a home rule petition, which Mario will allude to, creates an incredible sense of uncertainty during that process for the disabled officer and certainly for their family, which the process itself can be fairly lengthy. I will defer the balance of my time to my co-panelists, and I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you here this morning. And hopefully you will give due consideration to this bill and move it along in the process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. And part of the panel to testify is retired Detective Mario Oliveira.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman Brady and Chairman Gordon and honorable members of the committee. My name is Mario Oliveira. I am retired detective from Somerville Police. I was also a task force officer with the ATF. On November 2nd, 2010, while serving an arrest warrant on an individual who had been trafficking firearms from New Hampshire across state lines into Boston in the greater Boston area, supplying gang members with illegal firearms. I was in the process of making an arrest, subsequently was shot 6 times at point-blank range by this individual, transported to the hospital, made it there by the skin of my teeth. I died twice at the hospital. Sorry. By the grace of God, they saved me. Made it home to my family. I found out my wife was pregnant the day I got home from the hospital. Only to wait a year and a half for an answer from my mayor on whether or not he was going to give me the home rule petition, special legislation for 100% of my base, just my base salary, what I would have earned had I not been shot and nearly killed. And I can tell you sincerely, for the year and a half that I waited at home, I fell into a deep, deep depression. I lost a year and a half of my life that I'll never get back. I dropped down to 130 pounds. I wouldn't go to family functions. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I felt like I became a burden to my family. Here's my wife who just gave birth to a brand new baby. I have 2 little boys, a 3-year-old and a newborn. And you can imagine what was going through my head. I had a financial plan. My plan was to work hard, send my kids to school, to college, buy a summer home someday if I can afford it, so I can take my kids and my wife, up to New Hampshire and enjoy a lake, just to relax on weekends, after a stressful week on the job. And that all was taken away from me. It was all taken away, and my dreams were shattered. And there's nothing worse than feeling at home and feeling like you've been betrayed by your own city administration, by not even receiving a single phone call from the mayor. My department was wonderful, I'll be honest. The chief, the deputy chiefs, they would check on me constantly. But when I asked them a question of where's my special legislation stand? They had no answers. They were left out in the dark as well by city administrators. And there were days, I'll be honest, I contemplating on taking my own life because I felt worthless. I felt worthless. Let me close by letting you folks all know what my family would have received had I died that night. Right now, if an officer dies in the line of duty, there's a one-time federal payment of $370,170. That's from the PSOB, Public Safety Officers Benefits Program, funded by the DOJ. So $370,170, tax-free, one lump sum. In addition to that, our great state of Massachusetts has a $300,000 payout, thankfully, and that's thanks to all of you lawmakers. So $300,000 tax-free from the state, $370,000. I held the rank of senior detective at the time. My wife would have received 100% of my salary for the rest of her life, to include any pay raises, any stipends she would get. They would have to pay my wife as if I was still living. My kids want to go to college. They had an in-state college tuition with real estate tax exemption on my home. I lived in Billerica at the time. And also 402A status. If my children wanted to become cops or firemen and they wanted to go on a civil service list, they would have preference under a wounded veteran. So those are all the benefits that are afforded to the family of a fallen police officer. Why is it that because I took 6 bullets and survived, I had to endure more suffering than the unknown? And that's why this legislation, if passed, and it should be passed, will alleviate any officer from ever going through the turmoil and the aggravation and the suffering that I went through. I don't want anybody to ever suffer what I suffered. It's just not right. And as Senator Friedman said, it creates a fair and level balanced playing field for everyone. And there is a narrow window. You need to be shot, stabbed. We don't want fraud and abuse on this. We don't. I don't. I want this to be fair. And for those only that deserve to get taken care of financially in this manner. And with that, I'll yield the rest of my time to whoever else is after me. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Detective. Chief Robert Bongiorno.
Chief, you're still on mute. Chief, Bobby, you're on mute.
Thank you. Mr. Chairs, Senator Brady, my good friend, Rep. Gordon from Bedford. I'd also like to thank Senator Friedman for her work on this. Each and every time I hear Mario, it makes me emotional. And that's the reason why I'm here. He's a true hero, a true American hero. How did Chief Keyes and I get involved? I'd like to draw your attention to November 2nd, 2016. I was sitting at a typical day here in Bedford, and Mario in his role at Nespin had come to see me. And we hadn't seen each other, having worked in neighboring departments. And I hadn't seen him since the tragic events of 2010. And I asked him how he was doing. And he told me the ordeal that he and his family went through. And he told me, this is what he said to me. You know, Bobby, I'd be better off dead. I couldn't believe it. He said, the ordeal that I put my family through was unacceptable. I said, Mario, this is unacceptable. What do we need to do? Mario very simply said, speak out. Speak out. You heard Chief Keyes mention, that's what we did. We got together. We got the Mass Chiefs together. Unprecedented. We got the unions together. We got support. Unprecedented. And Chief Keyes will confirm this. United front. This is the first time ever I've seen police chiefs and unions united under one bill to make something good happen to make sure that what Mario, Rob DiNapoli, and many others will not suffer and not have to endure that pain. So what can we do? We can pass this bill. You heard Chief Kais mention it's few and far between. In Mario's name, we don't want this to be an average 72% bill. There are mechanisms in place to make sure that only those violently injured will receive this bill. So please, this remains a priority of the Massachusetts Chiefs of Police Association, the unions. Do this for Mario. You heard his testimony, how compelling it was. We have to do something. We have to support our men and women in uniform. In closing, I'll be submitting written testimony. I'd like to read my last paragraph for the record. Our heroes in uniform are not superheroes with supernatural abilities and powers. They are human beings, as fragile and vulnerable as anyone else. If we honor their hard work, we must honor their sacrifice, and we must do what we can to ensure their families will not be victimized by the valor of their loved ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And Detective, what you went through is totally unacceptable. So I appreciate your strength in testifying today. I can't imagine what you've gone through. And I know that all of the police departments or the police officers have put their life on the line every day and day out. So I thank you for your strength and your testimony today. And thank you for bringing this to our committee hearing today. Co-Chair Gordon, do you have any questions or testimony?
Really just a gratitude to extend on behalf of our committee to coming in and testifying about this important bill, putting a human face to this bill, to this story. Detective, thank you very much, Mario, for your testimony. And Chiefs, thank you very much for supporting Mario in the struggle that he's gone through. It's important to have allies like you. It's important to have these efforts, and as I think it was maybe Chief Bongiorno who said to speak up, and we're glad that you did.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Is there any committee members?
Mr. Chair.
Go right ahead, Representative.
Mr. Chair, likewise, I'd just like to make a comment. First, to thank my good friend Mario for his compelling testimony here. This is, I believe, my fourth session in a row sitting on this committee and hearing Mario come in and offer his story. And I know it's got to take a lot out of him every time he comes here to tell it. And his story, Bob DiNapoli's story, the story of Jared McDonald from Bourne PD, Donnie D. Miranda, and Ryan Moore from Falmouth PD. It's a small universe, but it's a growing universe. And I believe that as long as we continue to send police officers out there into very, very dangerous situations, we need to ensure that they and their families are protected. And I would strongly urge that we report this bill out of committee favorably. And I appreciate that the police chiefs taking the time out of their schedule as well to show a unity between management and labor on this. And I know we're going to be hearing from a number of people from the labor side of the house as well. So we have so many people on board with this and so few. I have yet to hear anyone in opposition from the day that Senator Donnelly first filed this back in 2015, I believe. All the way forward here. So it's just my sincere hope that we can get it done this time around. And thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative.
Mr.
Anyone
Chair,
else? Go ahead.
yes, I just wanted to reach out to Detective Oliveira as one of the representatives from Somerville to thank him for sharing his incredibly moving and painful story and thank him for his courage and service to our city. While I do not have oversight over the city's administration, I'm very upset to hear of this failure of our public institution and will work tirelessly to work with our city to not let these experiences and situations go to the wayside as what happened to Detective Oliveira. So I just wanted to say thank you and express gratitude.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative. Anyone else? I also want to say, go right ahead. I'm sorry.
I just, my name is John Magoulas. I'm Executive Secretary with VIPO. I'd like to say thank you to the Joint Committee for this public service hearing. obviously to yourself and the ranking members and all the people that are here today. As somebody that's been with VIPO for a little over 2 years, I've been witness firsthand with the impact that this has in the community on people with Mario who have such a profound and impactful story. While we work behind the scenes, obviously, with our peers and helping them transition through the suffering that they go through the physical emotions, we recognize the importance of these pieces of legislation that are put forward. And I'd just like to offer my gratitude to be a part of that and helping to work towards making a difference, but also supporting such legislation as important as this. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you, John, for your testimony. Is there anyone else? Detective Oliveira, I want to thank you for your heart-wrenching testimony, and I know that you know firsthand, as well as many of our other police officers on the front line, that know what your families go through too, and our heart goes out to the families as well. And I'm hoping we can get this moved as swiftly as possible. So thank you, everyone, for your testimony.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. I don't see any other legislators as of yet. So Jim Durkin, you're up next.
Thank you, Chairman Brady, Chairman Gordon, members of the committee. For the record, Jim Durkin, Legislative Director for ASME Council 93, representing 35,000 hardworking public sector employees here in Massachusetts. Here today to express our support for 6 bills, and I will be as brief as possible. 4 of the bills seek to address inequities in line of duty injury benefits. Senate Bill 1762 and House Bill 2763 seek to correct an inequity in these injury corrections offices. Senate Bill 1763 would do the same for police officers working on the campuses of our public higher education campuses who, under the new police reform law, are held to the same training, certification, and professional standards as municipal police officers. And then Senate Bill 1764 would close what I classify as a loophole in the law that prevents our state human services workers who are frequently and violently attacked by individuals in their care from receiving injury pay in the rare times when they're actually assaulted by a visitor to these facilities. Under the letter of the law, they can only get the injury pay benefit if they're attacked by a patient. I'm going to be submitting written testimony on these 4 bills. So in the interest of time, I'm going to spend the remainder of my time on Senate Bill 1741 and House Bill 2716, both of which would extend an important and well-deserved benefit to all public sector workers. For many years now, the brave men and women who serve in public safety have had this well-deserved protection for their spouses and their children. It's a death benefit, currently at $300,000 that's paid to their loved ones in the event they lose their life through an accident or injury that occurs while they're doing their job. And we're here today to advocate for these bills, which would extend that benefit to all public sector workers. Look, it's fair to say there's an element of danger to virtually all public sector jobs. And for some, of course, the risk is much higher and the chances of being seriously injured or killed is more prevalent. And that's one of the reasons we have different retirement classifications, right? To prevent people who face serious risks every day on the job from being forced to work beyond an age where they can be reasonably expected to safely perform their duties. That's not what this legislation is about. These bills do not seek an earlier retirement age for our mental health workers or our municipal employees. They simply ask the legislature to recognize that when it comes to losing your life on the job, everyone is equal. Every worker and every family has paid the same price. The husbands, wives, and children who are left behind are equally traumatized and equally challenged emotionally and financially by the loss. Back in 2011, an ASME member by the name of Carlos Taveras was working alone, repairing a Bobcat in the city of New Bedford garage. The scoop of the Bobcat fell on his back. It crushed him to death. He had a big family, 6 kids, but no line of duty death benefit for his family, just a $5,000 life insurance policy he purchased through the city, not even enough to cover funeral expenses. About a year later, another ASME member, Jason Liu, was attacked by a patient in his care at a mental health facility on Cape Cod. He suffered serious injuries, and although he'd survived the day, he died a few weeks later, and his death was ruled a homicide by the district attorney. Jason was the father of 2. He was murdered on the job, but the only benefit his family received came through donations from his union brothers and sisters. In 2014, a public works employee from Natick, a member of another union, was killed while working with a crew on an emergency repair to a broken water main. Press called it a freak accident, and maybe it was a rare occurrence, but it still cost Mike McDaniel his life, and his wife and 9-year-old daughter was still left behind, left to somehow try and manage not just emotionally, but financially as well. They set up a website, his friends and coworkers, to raise money for the family. It helped, but over several years, it raised just a little under 14% of what his wife and children would have received instantaneously if he was working in a public safety position. Now, it's important to note that until March 2017, this benefit was $150,000. And that month, a dedicated and long-serving Watertown firefighter lost his life while responding to a 2-alarm blaze. Within 8 days of that tragedy, the bill was signed into law, doubling that benefit to $300,000, with language making it retroactive to cover that firefighter's family. It was an incredibly moving and well-deserved benefit. But another tragic death of a public employee went largely unnoticed just 3 days before that tragedy. Warren Cowles, an employee of the Longmeadow Department of Public Works, was working to clear roads during a March nor'easter when his truck was struck by an Amtrak plow train. He was killed instantly. And despite the fact that he died while doing a difficult job for the taxpayers, despite the fact that our first responders, relying on people like Mr. Cowles to ensure they can respond quickly and safely to emergencies, there was no line of duty death benefit. We hope this committee agrees that this needs to be changed. The bills would apply the line of duty death benefit to all public sector workers going forward, no retroactivity. Mr. Chairman, I'll close with this. ASME represents thousands of public safety officers here in New England and across the country. We know they're a special group of men and women who do dangerous and thankless jobs, but we also represent thousands of what we call the unsung heroes in government: public works, direct care workers, electricians, other tradesmen, many more. And we believe there's something fundamentally wrong with telling one family that the loss of their parent or spouse's life entitles them to $300,000, and telling another spouse or child that their loved one's life is worth $0. We're asking the legislature and the governor to recognize that when it comes to losing one's life on the job, the families of all public employees should be treated equally. I thank you for your consideration, and I will do my best to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for your testimony, Jim. My co-chair Gordon,
Thank you for your testimony. I don't have any questions.
anyone else on the committee? Seeing none. Thank you, Jim.
Mr. Chairman, could I add one thing?
Go right ahead.
Just in case there's any question amongst the committee, this is not a COVID-related bill. This bill has been refiled for the past 5 or 6 years. We actually got it through the Senate one time in the budget, but it did not survive conference committee. And I know rightfully there are many bills related to the COVID pandemic, but I just wanted to make that distinction that this legislation's been around for quite a while. Thank you again.
Thank you, Jim. Next up, we have Christopher Bajukas. I hope I pronounced that.
Morning,
right.
Mr. Brady. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Hi, good morning. My name is Chris Bajukas. I'm on about H2718. In June 2004, I was involved in the violent altercation at the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department in Boston. While breaking up a fight between several inmates, I tore my meniscus and ACL, went through the normal courses of treatment, and was getting better slowly. During this time, I went for routine physicals. At this time, I found out I needed heart surgery for an aortic aneurysm that was close to dissection. Approximately 3 weeks later, I found myself at Mass General Hospital for heart surgery. Approximately 4 to 5 weeks later after that surgery, I had a workers' compensation hearing in Fall River. During that time, I was asked about my current condition. I mentioned the heart surgery and was informed at the end of the hearing I would not be allowed to return to work and that they were involuntarily retiring me. Fast forward to January 6, 2020, I had another heart surgery for another aneurysm aortic root, as well as an aortic valve. I had every intention of returning to the career that I loved. I was a corrections officer, a canine officer, worked fugitive apprehension, as well as training. I loved the job and the people that I worked with. My career was cut short, not by my hand. In short, I am being punished for being injured in service to the Commonwealth. I have one daughter who lives with me. She is currently attending Mass Maritime and hopefully will do far greater things than I have ever done. H2718 is so important to me and many others like me. This bill would allow me to fulfill promise I made to my daughter that I would be able to pay for her schooling. It would also allow me to thrive after 2 open heart surgeries and have a great second career. I would ask for the committee's favorable ruling on this bill.
Thank you for your testimony. Co-Chair Gordon,
Thank you. No question.
anyone else on the committee? Seeing none, then Chris, thank you for your testimony.
You're welcome, sir.
And next up, we have Kevin Flanagan and Guy Glotus.
Good morning, Chair Brady, Chair Gordon, and members of the committee. My name is Kevin Flanagan, and I'm the legislative representative for Massachusetts Correction Officers Federated Union. We represent approximately 4,000 correction officers at the state DOC and a couple of counties. I'm here to give testimony on a couple of bills today. The first is Senate Bill 1682, which has to do with GIC healthcare coverage for uniformed members that have filed accidental disability retirement, commonly known as ADR. This bill was filed by Senator Cronin and co-sponsored by McCufu. When officers are assaulted, a lot of times these assaults result in injuries where an officer cannot return to work and perform their duties. When this happens, an ADR is filed to the retirement board, and that process can take well over a year. During this long and arduous process, there is an administrative hearing held within the Department of Correction that basically states that the department and the officer agree that they cannot return to work. When this happens, the officer is separated and is placed on unpaid status, which means that his now violent pay is cut and reduced to under 60%, and he or she is left with no health care coverage. That officer is left to go out and find health care either through Mass Health or COBRA. We've had officers we have officers that have families, and when that happens, when the officer is injured, gets the COBRA, has to pay out of pocket $1,500 a month just to have healthcare coverage for himself and the family. Because the process of an ADR is so long, because you have to go in front of medical review panels and several doctors, you're looking at a good 9 to 12 months while he or she is paying out of pocket $1,500 for healthcare. That's approximately $18,000 a year. This bill here would allow the officer to continue with this GIC healthcare coverage throughout the entire process until the ADR, through the entire ADR process until full retirement benefits are awarded. We're asking that the committee look at this bill and report out favorably to allow and alleviate the undue hardship that this puts on an officer, not only who suffered the injury at work, but now has to pay out of pocket almost $18,000 for healthcare coverage that he or she should have while through the GIC. I'm also here in support of Senate Bill 1722, which we've heard some very compelling testimony. We're in support of this bill fully because if we all remember a year and a half ago at Susan Baranowski, there was a severe assault on several staff members. These staff members have been out of work for a year and a half. They suffered significant injuries. They were punched, they were kicked, and those inmates there were trying to kill several of those officers. They spent many weeks in the hospital, went through several surgeries, and that's just the physical part. We also know the mental aspect of getting assaulted that severe at work. These officers are now out of work and they're only receiving 72% of their pay and most likely will never be able to return to work because of their injuries. This increase from 72% to 100% would would alleviate a lot of the problems that these young officers have who are only in their early 30s and are missing out on overtime, contractual raises. And this gives them the ability to make a livable wage from injuries that they served in the performance of their duties. So we're asking that the committee report out favorably Senate Bill 1722. I'd like to turn it over to our lobbyist, Guy Lotus.
Mr. Chairman, through you to members of the committee, good morning and thank you for the time. I will be brief. I just wanted to speak briefly, not only as the legislative agent for the Mass Correctional Officers Federated Union, but also this morning as a former correction officer, sheriff, and as former chairman of the Joint Committee on Public Safety. I can remember firsthand stories of hardship that Kevin mentioned.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Correctional officers that got hurt, disabled, and couldn't perform their duties adequately. The ADR process can be very lengthy and cumbersome. On average, 9 to 12 months. In some cases, Mr. Chairman, over a year before they receive that accidental disability retirement. It is not right, and it sends the wrong message that these officers that are injured many times want to go back to work, but can't, receive zero health insurance. They have to go out and buy health insurance, which is very costly, sometimes as much as $1,500, $1,800 a month, which could be $15,000, $16,000 over the course of the year. And there's been many stories of different officers when they were out without coverage, that had family members that were going through cancer treatment, or themselves that came down with more serious illness on top of their accidental disability. So we're respectfully asking through you, Mr. Chairman, to the committee to support and pass Senate Bill 1682. And obviously, as Representative Whalen and other legislators, Senator Friedman mentioned, we're here obviously in full support of Senate Bill 1722. It's common sense for the Commonwealth, and we hope both these bills can pass. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Brady, I think you're on mute. I know you're on mute.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for both your testimonies. Chairman Gordon?
No, thank you very much for your testimony. I appreciate it. These are important matters to address, and we will.
Anyone else on the committee?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just very briefly, as one of those corrections officers who back in the day served right alongside Sheriff Glotus back a million years ago, I just want to publicly state my support for their bill to extend this to corrections officers as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Anyone else? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Next up is Robert Seed.
Hello? Hello,
Yeah,
sir?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Oh, yes, sir. Just bear with me for a moment. Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of this committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak here today in favor of House Bill number 2790. I feel this is an excellent bill for the greater good of the citizens of Massachusetts. This bill would allow a separate path to individuals that qualify to convert a Massachusetts ordinary disability pension with its many restrictions to a superannuation pension. Excuse me a moment, I just have to adjust. Thank you. Yes, this bill would create a path for so the ordinary disability could be converted to a superannuation. Currently, it's a very lengthy process to convert these. You have to go through a panel of doctors. If the doctors approve the pensioner on the ordinary disability to go forward, the cities and towns are forced to take back the individual and fund a position that they may not have the funds available. And also all the time away from the job is credited back to the pensioner as well, which would also be a financial hardship for the state or the municipalities. So this is just another path that would be straightforward to, if qualified through supervision of doctors, that these individuals on ordinary disability could return to the workforce unrestricted in what they can earn and unrestricted as to what they can actually do. Many people on ordinary disability are tradesmen, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, school bus drivers that currently have many restrictions on them. So I'm speaking here today to give my support to Bill number 2790. I speak to this directly because I'm currently on an ordinary disability. I've received several surgeries and I'm rehabbing, and I feel I have much more to offer the workforce of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and also would strengthen the tax base as well. If I could earn more, I obviously pay more taxes. So I am also a master electrician, and currently I cannot perform those duties under the restrictions of the ordinary disability. And I am also, right now, I'm working as a school bus driver, which is in much demand, as we know in the news. And I can only work so many hours as a school bus driver because I cannot go over the earning restrictions of the ordinary disability. Therefore, I respectfully ask the wisdom of this committee to move this very productive and progressive Massachusetts Bill number 2790 forward for passage. And I very much appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your testimony. Representative Co-Chair Gordon.
Thank you for your testimony. No questions.
Anyone else on the committee? Thank you again for your testimony. We have Representative Beal.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to you, Chair Gordon, members of the Joint Committee, for allowing me the opportunity to testify today in support of H2562, an act relative to firefighter retirement benefits. Currently, under Mass General Law, Chapter 32, Section 94B, firefighters have presumptive cancer benefits for up to 5 years after retirement. Unfortunately, we're seeing more and more being diagnosed more than 10 years after leaving service, and these firefighters and their families are prohibited under the statute from receiving benefits. This is happening with increasing frequency as municipalities continue to prioritize efforts in spending to increase preventative measures, which increases this latency period. This legislation seeks to remedy this situation by increasing the duration of service under which a firefighter can qualify for the rebuttable presumption under the statute of listed cancers suffered in the line of duty from 5 years to 10 years. So just changing the look back provision from 5 to 10, or increasing it rather. I am thankful for the time, attention, and efforts of this committee on this legislation in the past. I look forward to working with the committee again this session and hope that the bill is released with a favorable report. Thank you again for your time and consideration. If you have any questions or if I can be of any assistance to any of you, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you, Representative Co-Chair Gordon.
I don't have any questions. I thank you for your patience. I know you were in the waiting room for a little bit, but I'm glad we got to you so you could offer that important testimony.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Anyone else on the committee? Seeing none, thank you, Representative, again. And
Thank you, Mr.
leading up to the firefighters, we have Paul Jakes.
He's got like 3 guys with him.
And I know you have some other people with you too, Paul.
Yes. Good morning, Chair Brady and Chair Gordon, members of the committee and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. For the record, my name is Paul Jakes, legislative agent for the Professional Firefighters of Massachusetts. I'm joined today by Craig Hardy, legislative agent for the PFFM, and Brian Tully, Boston Firefighters Local 718, legislative agent. We have submitted written testimony and will be submitting more, but we would like to go on the record in support of the following legislation. House Bill 2562, House Bill 2668, 2794, 2711, 2771, Senate Bill 1782, 1720, 1756, and 1686. As we stated, we did submit written testimony. We'd just like to say a few words on House Bill 2562 that you heard Representative Beal speak on earlier. As he said, currently we have, as firefighters, have presumptive cancer benefits for up to 5 years after retirement. However, many are diagnosed with cancers more than 10 years, or after the 5 years and more than 10 years after they retire. An example of this is our friend, our colleague, your colleague as well, and friend, Senator Donnelly, who passed away from cancer and also was diagnosed after the 5-year time frame. So he was unable to take advantage of the benefit. These changes will take the 5-year look back and change it to 10. In this latency period for these occupational cancers is very long. So as you know, especially as we're healthier today, things take a longer time to affect us, unfortunately, and this would help out with the time frame from 5 to 10 years. House Bill 2711 will help, as we saw with firefighter Christopher Roy from Worcester, would help with surviving spouses and surviving children. And House Bill 2771, this legislation addresses 2 gaps in the law that would affect our firefighters that are on 3 military bases, Devens, Otis, and Barnes. So they would affect 2 different coverages that would put them in par with the rest of the state regarding coverage under Section 41, coverage under Master General Law 41, Section 100 and 200B. But we have submitted extensive detailed written testimony for you to learn more about these bills and how they affect us and the importance of reporting favorably out of committee. At this time, I'd like to pass it over to Brian Tully from Boston Firefighters Local 718.
Thank you.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning. I'd like to thank the chairs, Senator Brady, Representative Gordon, and the committee for allowing me to testify on House Bill 2562. My name is Brian Tully. I'm a 32-plus year veteran of the Boston Fire Department and a newly elected legislative agent for Local 718 Boston Firefighters. In the fire service, we're seeing a tremendous uptick in, occupational cancer diagnosis. And a lot of times retirees that are past the current 5-year look back, that's when they're receiving the bad news that they have cancer. A lot of times it seems, unluckily that the diagnosis comes somewhere between the 5 and 10 year after retirement age. I'm just going to speak on my former captain, who was a friend of mine and work colleague for 30 years. Somewhere after the 5-year look back, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and after a 3-year battle, unfortunately, he passed away the day after Thanksgiving, 2020. We worked together at Engine 14 in Roxbury on Dudley Street. And we were one of the engine companies with foam capability. And recent studies have shown that there is a direct relation between firefighting foams and many types of cancer, and pancreatic cancer is one of the most diagnosed cancers related to foam. So, it does happen. I think 5 years is too little of a time. So thank you for allowing me to testify, and please report favorably on this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Is Craig Hardy here?
We have a meeting going on at the time, so he's back and forth. He's unable to testify at this time.
Is that the same, Paul, with Mark Sanders?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else you have with you?
No, that's it.
All right, well, thank you both for your testimony, and I know that we had a solemn event. It's hard to believe it's been 20 years since September 11th, and we've seen even the long-term effects after that tragedy. And I appreciate all the work, and you know, you were all there for the memorial service. We had it in many towns in my community as well as in Boston. But again, we will never forget. So thank you for your testimony, both of you. I'm going to go down the list. I don't see anyone else who has signed in to testify, so I'm going through the list. And I got to throw the glasses back on because I'm getting old here.
Well, thanks again for your support, Senator Brady.
Thank you. So next is House Bill 2560, an act relative to evaluations on a retired veteran disability. Is there anyone to testify on that? Seeing none, we're going to move on. I know we had testimony on House Bill 2562, an act relative to firefighter retirement benefits. Anybody else to testify on that? Seeing none. Next is House Bill 2629, an act relative to call and volunteer firefighters and EMTs. Seeing none. I know we had testimony on House Bill 2639, an act to provide pensions to surviving spouses of the Department of Children and Family Social Workers. We already had testimony on that. Is there anyone else to testify? Seeing none. Next is House Bill 2642, an act relative to disability pensions for violent crimes. Seeing no one else on that. Next is House Bill 2668, an act relative to line of duty death and survivor benefits. Seeing no one else. House Bill 2678, House Bill 2675, an act to clarify leave under Chapter 41, 111F. Seeing none. Next is House Bill 2695, an act relative to the Disability Retirement System Alternative Commission. Seeing none. Next is House Bill 2697, an act relative to disability pensions for violent crimes. Hearing no one else to testify on that. Next is House Bill 2711, an act relative to pensions for children of public safety officers killed in the line of duty. Seeing none. Next is House Bill 2712, an act relative to public safety employee death benefits. Seeing none. Next is House Bill 2716, an act providing fair and equitable line of duty death benefits for public employees. We've heard testimony. Is there anyone else for that? Seeing none. Next is House Bill 2718, an act regarding post-disability retirement earnings. Seeing no one else in that. Next is House Bill 2728, an act relative to public safety line of duty benefits. Next is House Bill 2760, an act relative to police officers and firefighters relative to Chapter 41, Section 111F again. Seeing none. Next is House Bill 2763, an act relative to injured correctional officers. We've heard testimony already. Anyone else? Seeing none. Next is House Bill 2771, an act relative to the Commonwealth's fire departments. Seeing no one else for that. Next is House Bill 2778, an act relative to providing the next of kin of a state police officer killed in the line of duty with a flag during the memorial service. Seeing no one on that. Next is House Bill 2790, an act allowing disabled retirees to return to work. Seeing no one else on that. Next is House Bill 2794, an act providing the next of kin of a police officer or firefighter killed in the line of duty with the flags of the Commonwealth, same as the other bill. Seeing no one on that. Next is House Bill 2799, an act relative to disability retirees and restoration to service.
Mr. Chairman, I'll submit written testimony on that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Thank you for your written testimony, Representative. Next is House Bill 3943, an act directing the Bristol County Retirement Board to grant credible service to Christopher J. Gallagher. Next is House Bill 4097, an act authorizing the town of West Stockbridge to continue the employment of Stephen Trevor. Next, Senate Bill 1662, an act relative to restoration to service. Next, Senate Bill 1680, an act relative to ordinary disability retirements. Next is Senate Bill 1682, an act relative to GIC healthcare coverage for Group 4 members pending disability retirement. Next is Senate Bill 1686, an act relative to the Commonwealth's fire departments. Next is Senate Bill 1720, an act relative to line of duty death benefits. Anyone else to testify on that? Seeing none. Next is Senate Bill 1722, an act relative to disability pensions for violent crimes. We've heard testimony on that. Is there anyone else? Seeing none. Next is Senate Bill 1740, an act allowing for payment in lieu of a disability allowance. Next is Senate Bill 1741, an act providing fair and equitable line of duty death benefits for public employees. Seeing no further testimony on that. Next is Senate Bill 1750, an act relative to line of duty death benefits for private college and university police officers. Next is Senate Bill 1756, an act relative to pensions for children of public safety officers killed in the line of duty. Next is Senate Bill 1762, an act relative to correction officers injured in the line of duty. Next is Senate Bill 1763, an act relative to public higher education campus police officers injured in the line of duty. Next is Senate Bill 1764, an act relative to the line of duty injury benefits for public employees. Next is Senate Bill 1771, an act relative to surviving family members of public emergency medical technicians. Next is Senate Bill 1775, an act relative to disability retirees and restoration to service. Next is Senate Bill 1779, an act relative to disability pensions for public safety employees who are victim of violence. Seeing no one else on that. Next is Senate Bill 1782, an act providing the next of kin of a police officer, a firefighter killed in the line of duty with the flags of the Commonwealth in the United States. Is there anyone else that would wish to testify on any of the bills? Seeing none, do we have a motion? To adjourn.
Hang on, wait, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Jason King has asked to come in. So before we adjourn.
Go right
I think
ahead.
it's appropriate. And he's been here the whole time.
Okay, Jason, go right ahead.
Jason, you've just returned. It may be that you got kicked out, but we were about to adjourn. Make sure you're not here to offer testimony.
No, actually, Mr. Chairman, I did get kicked out. I'm just returning.
Okay. All right. Then Chair Brady, you were looking for a motion to adjourn.
So
Yeah,
moved.
no, what quick question, is Mr. King all set?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Rep. DeCosta. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your time and your patience today.